The sirens wailed as a bloodied teenager stumbled barefoot down a foggy New York alley, his eyes wide with panic, his hoodie torn. Ethan Reyes, just 17, was once a suburban math prodigy. Now, with millions in crypto and a warrant on his name, he was running from a world that had no place for rule-breakers like him. News anchors screamed his name. Traders whispered about the digital ghost who rigged markets and vanished. A homeless man watched from behind a dumpster. Ethan collapsed beside him, clutching a flash drive soaked in sweat and rain. It held everything: the code, the wallets, the truth. A month ago, he was invisible, mocked in class, abandoned by his father, building algorithms under candlelight. Now, he was a billionaire fugitive. As headlights sliced through the mist and footsteps closed in, he whispered, "It wasn't supposed to go this far." And then he vanished into the dark. 2 weeks earlier, Ethan sat alone in his dimly lit bedroom, where cracked monitors hummed and lines of code spilled across every screen. Old textbooks were piled like barricades, and a mattress without sheets slouched in the corner. The only warmth came from the gentle flicker of Python scripts calculating complex financial models. Ethan Reyes had no friends, only theories. His fingers danced across the keyboard with the precision of a concert pianist. "Nobody listens to kids," he muttered. "But they'll listen to numbers." Outside, his mother's voice was muffled through the thin apartment walls. She begged someone over the phone for more shifts. Ethan didn't flinch. He wasn't going to save them the normal way. His code didn't just predict coin spikes, it manipulated them. And tonight he would launch a program so advanced, it would either make him a ghost or a god. The algorithm was alive, a digital beast hidden inside thousands of blockchain nodes. Ethan leaned back, watching the simulation tear through market data like a predator. Tokens surged and dipped, guided by his unseen hand. He called it Hydra, a protocol that fractured its identity across hundreds of wallets and contracts. Impossible to trace. Unstoppable once triggered. He whispered, "This is how I disappear." As the program finalized, he stared at the wallet value climbing in real time. 500,000, 700, 1 million. He exhaled sharply. No school could teach this. No institution could handle it. Outside, the city moved on unaware. But inside this cracked apartment, the world had shifted. A teenager just wrote code that could bankrupt nations. It began with small tests. A flash loan exploit here. A timing vulnerability there. Ethan moved like a ghost, never using the same IP twice, routing through layers of encryption. Money poured into anonymous wallets. Forums buzzed with speculation. Who's Hydra? He smiled in the dark. Banks didn't see it coming. Traders blamed market noise. And Ethan? He just kept coding. But the hunger grew. He couldn't stop. Not after seeing what was possible. "They'll never trace it," he said aloud, not realizing how close he was to being wrong. Because someone was watching. Not the police. Not the banks. A shadow trader with eyes on blockchain anomalies. And he had just flagged Ethan's movement. Across the ocean, in a sleek Zurich office bathed in white and chrome, a woman in a sharp suit tapped her screen. "We have him," she said coldly. Surveillance footage stitched together by AI. VPN missteps. What? Wallet patterns. Hydra wasn't invisible anymore. She worked for an entity without a name, without borders. Governments, corporations, and the ultra-rich funneled through them. Ethan Reyes, 17, Brooklyn. The name pulsed on the screen. Her finger hovered over a red icon, initiate retrieval. Meanwhile, Ethan looked at his reflection in the cracked window back home, unaware his world was closing in. The message came wrapped in code, an alert disguised as a transaction log buried in the blockchain. Ethan froze when he saw it. Someone had responded to Hydra, using its own encryption signature. "You're not invisible," the message read. His heart thundered. He was supposed to be untouchable. He slammed his laptop shut and ripped out the power cord. It was too late. Whoever found him had already seen too much. He reached for his backup drive and slid it into a hidden compartment in the wall, one he'd carved behind peeling wallpaper. His breath trembled. They found Hydra. Panic mixed with adrenaline as he pulled a burner phone from his drawer. There were protocols for this, a digital fire escape. But part of him knew. This wasn't just about running anymore. Someone was hunting him, and they were close enough to whisper through code. Miles away, the Zurich operative paced through a war room lined with vertical displays. Her team, silent and precise, tracked Ethan's digital residue across wallets and exchanges. He pulled the plug. An analyst said, "Hydra just went dark." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Which means we're close." Her voice sliced through the room. "Initiate level 3 trace. I want proximity readings." On the screens, global node traffic exploded in color. "He thinks he's deleting us, but the moment he turned Hydra off, he gave us everything." Beneath the fluorescent buzz, her polished shoes echoed across the floor. "It's not about arresting him," she whispered. "It's about control. We don't kill prodigies, we recruit them." Ethan fled into the night, backpack slung tight, city lights flickering like a warning system. He moved through back streets and tunnels, his route encrypted in muscle memory. The city didn't care who he was. But Ethan had memorized every surveillance blind spot, every gap between street cams. Under a broken bridge, he paused, his breath fogging in the cold air. A discarded newspaper drifted by. Hydra suspected in global coin crash. He stared. He hadn't meant for this. People were hurting. But he couldn't stop now. Not when the machine he built had already been unleashed. "They made me into a villain," he muttered. "So I'll play the part." Back in Brooklyn, Ethan's mother stood at the kitchen sink, staring out a cracked window. Her hands trembled as she held her phone. Voicemails from reporters, investigators, people she hadn't heard from in years. The name, Ethan Reyes, echoed on every channel. She dropped the phone. "You said it was just math," she whispered. She remembered his quiet defiance, the late nights, the burning ambition behind those tired eyes. She had begged him to stop, begged him to be ordinary. But Ethan was never meant for ordinary. Now her son was the center of a global scandal, and all she could do was wait, for a knock, for a headline, or for silence. In a hidden server farm beneath Prague, the shadow trader finally spoke. He'd been watching Hydra for weeks, mapping every microtransaction and behavioral anomaly. His screen flickered to life as he connected with the Zurich team. "He's spiraling," he said calmly. "If you corner him, he'll vanish for good." The woman replied, "We don't need to trap him, we need him scared." A pause. "Then you're succeeding." Ethan's fear wasn't just visible, it was predictable. And predictable meant controllable. Somewhere deep in the blockchain, the trader injected a new message: "We can help you disappear, on our terms." It wasn't a threat. It was an offer. And the net was closing. Ethan sat in an abandoned subway car, deep beneath the city where cell signals died and memories echoed. Around him, graffiti whispered old rebellions. He stared at the phone in his hand, the message still glowing. "We can help you disappear." He didn't know if it was bait or salvation. His thumb hovered over the reply button. Behind him, rats skittered. The train hadn't moved in decades, yet it felt like the last place in New York untouched by surveillance. "They want me alive," he murmured. "Why?" His fingers trembled as he typed. "What do you want?" Then he pressed send. No turning back now. The silence of the underground answered with a low mechanical hum. The game was no longer just digital. It was becoming human. Zurich got the ping first. The operative smirked. He responded. Across the world, silent protocols activated. In Tokyo, a server cluster rerouted traffic. In Cape Town, a digital key decrypted Ethan's blockchain profile. And in D.C., a senator's phone vibrated with a silent notification. Hydra project is live. It was never just about crypto. It was about control. Ethan had created a system more powerful than he knew, one that could reshape currency, collapse regimes. Hell run out of hiding spots, the Zurich agent said, adjusting her earpiece. Hell need us eventually. But what none of them saw was the second message Ethan sent, encrypted with a signature that hadn't been used since 2009. Satoshi's. The old hacker was already waiting when Ethan entered the internet cafe in Queens. The man looked like a relic, beard like static, eyes yellowed from screen glow. You're either brave or stupid, he said. Ethan slid a hard drive across the counter. I need this cracked. The man raised an eyebrow. This wallet signature, this is Genesis block encryption. Ethan didn't blink. I think someone left me a back door. The hacker tapped a key. Or a trap. Silence. Then, a file opened. The screen pulsed with old keys, dormant accounts, millions in untouched coin. But deeper still, coordinates, and a final line of code. If you're reading this, it began, you're not the first. In a desolate warehouse off Staten Island, Ethan stood before a server rig that hadn't been touched in over a decade. Dust coated the floor like ash. The coordinates had led him here. He powered the system with an old diesel generator. Lights flickered. Fans whirred to life. And on the main terminal, a message appeared. Hydra was Phase 1. He stared, breath caught. Then, initiate Phase 2? Ethan hesitated. All he wanted was to survive. But this could change everything. He clicked yes. The server screamed as lines of code erupted. Hidden wallets activated. Global financial feeds flickered. And far away, the Zurich team watched it all unfold, helpless. Markets trembled. Exchanges froze. Banks saw reserves vanish in microseconds. The world called it a glitch. But it wasn't. It was Ethan. Phase 2 had redistributed billions, micro-donations, wiped debts, reversed trades, and cloaked origins. Hydra had evolved. In Brooklyn, his mother watched her old debt balance suddenly read 0. In Nairobi, a clinic received a surge of anonymous funding. In Zurich, the operative's face went pale. It's not theft, she whispered. It's redistribution. But Ethan didn't do it for justice. He did it because the system made monsters and then punished them for surviving. They wanted a villain, he whispered, watching chaos bloom. Now they've got one. Zurich descended into controlled chaos. Analysts shouted, code streamed like water down digital walls. The operative stood still, staring at the Hydra dashboard. Wallets were emptying in synchronized pulses, irreversible and silent. It's not about the money, she said through clenched teeth. It's about leverage. Her superior appeared on a secure screen. We underestimated him. No, she replied. We empowered him. Hydra wasn't just a program, it was a statement, a virus of ideology spreading through systems designed to never be questioned. Do we contain it? The voice asked. She hesitated, then said, no, we study it. As the screen faded, she whispered, the boy just rewrote the rules. Ethan didn't stop moving. He'd left the warehouse behind, the server fried from the load. Now he navigated rooftops and subways, his eyes scanning every corner. A voice buzzed in his burner phone, anonymous, modulated. They're not trying to catch you anymore. They're trying to study you. Ethan stopped. Why help me? The voice replied, because you woke something up, and some of us have been waiting for that. He didn't know if it was truth or manipulation. But for the first time, he wasn't running from systems. He was running inside them, faster than anyone could follow. You've made enemies, the voice warned. But also believers. At a secret campus in Geneva, the world's top cryptographers gathered behind mirrored glass. A panel of aging tech pioneers debated one question. Is Ethan Reyes the new Satoshi? Footage played of Hydra's algorithm, fluid, self-adaptive, seemingly conscious. We spent decades securing markets, one murmured. He unraveled them in days. Another added, he didn't destroy wealth, he reallocated it, instantly. The screen showed microtransactions across 80 nations. It wasn't theft. It was precision-targeted disruption. The youngest panelist leaned forward. If he's Satoshi's successor, who do we become? Silence fell. The answer wasn't clear. But the fear was. Deep in the darknet's core, a movement sparked. Anonymous users began adapting Hydra's code, repurposing it for local revolutions, small economies, and encrypted aid. Ethan's creation was no longer his. He watched forums light up with clones, forks, and uprisings. You can't contain an idea, he whispered, eyes flicking over screen after screen. Some used Hydra for good, others for chaos. The lines blurred quickly. Am I the match or the fire? He wondered aloud. He knew now. This wasn't about redemption. It was about impact. And the wave he triggered would drown more than banks. It would reshape belief itself. A new message appeared, untraceable, unsigned, meet at the edge. It came with GPS coordinates, Antarctica. Antarctica. Ethan stared in disbelief. Is this a trap or a threshold? He knew this story wasn't his anymore. But someone out there, maybe the origin, maybe the next phase, wanted to meet. A place without laws, without signals. Only ice and isolation. He closed his laptop. Booked nothing. Told no one. Then disappeared. In Zurich, the operative received the same ping. In Geneva, the panel fell silent. In Brooklyn, his mother looked out the window one last time. And across the world, thousands waited. Because legends don't end. They evolve. Ethan stood at the base of a derelict research outpost, wind howling like ghosts through broken antenna. Antarctica was silent, white, endless. The outpost door creaked open. Inside, heat, light, and a single terminal. The screen blinked once, then loaded an interface identical to Hydra's. A voice modulator activated. You built a version of us, it said. But we were the seed. Ethan froze. Who are you? The voice replied, the origin. Satoshi was never one person. Suddenly, a file loaded titled Phase 0. It predated Bitcoin. You're not here to finish your work, the voice said. You're here to start ours. Ethan's world tilted. He hadn't reached the end. He'd uncovered the beginning. The screen revealed footage from decades ago, early digital architects in secret labs working under cold lights. These weren't just programmers. They were dissenters, philosophers, ex-agents. We wanted freedom, the voice said. But they turned it into profit. Bitcoin had always been a distraction, a tool to test whether the world was ready for true decentralization. You were chosen, the voice continued, because you broke the chain. Ethan sat down slowly. The implications shattered him. He wasn't a mistake. He was the contingency. So what now? He asked. Now, the voice said, you decide if the world deserves Phase 0. Back in the world, ripple effects exploded. The Hydra forks mutated into new systems, some elegant, others monstrous. In Caracas, Hydra-backed credits fed starving families. In Moscow, a Hydra variant toppled a corrupt finance minister. But in Jakarta, chaos reigned, too many forks, too little control. The Hydra virus had transcended ideology. Now it lived in the hands of those desperate enough to gamble everything. News networks tried to explain it. Economists tried to contain it. But neither could stop what had already evolved. Ethan's fingerprints were everywhere, but his body was nowhere. And that terrified everyone more. Ethan stood alone at the edge of a crevasse, snow swirling like static. The decision hung heavy. Launching Phase Zero meant absolute transparency, no hiding, no anonymity, no banks. It would flatten economies and erase empires. He could walk away, destroy the drive, live as a ghost. But he remembered the boys at school who called him worthless, the teachers who ignored him, the job boards that filtered him out. He remembered his mother crying over unpaid rent. He remembered being invisible. "Let them feel what I felt," he whispered. Then he inserted the drive into the terminal. No turning back. The activation spread like light through darkness. Systems blinked off, then rebooted, not owned, not traded, but shared. Phase Zero introduced a currency backed by consensus, not control. Wealth realigned. Nations scrambled. Markets crashed, then equalized. Some called it the end of capitalism. Others, the birth of digital democracy. But no one could find Ethan. He'd vanished into the myth. In Zurich, the operative watched her balance reset to zero. In Brooklyn, his mother received a message, paid in full. The world moved on, but something fundamental had shifted. Because now, anyone could be Hydra. And the runaway teen? He had become legend. 3 months later, the world had adapted, but barely. Phase Zero was no longer just a system, it was a way of life. Paper currency was obsolete. Credit systems collapsed and rebuilt themselves overnight. In the middle of it all, underground Hydra schools began forming, secret, digital sanctuaries where outcasts learned code instead of doctrine. In an alley classroom in Lagos, a girl asked her teacher, "Is the Hydra real?" The mentor, barely older than her, replied, "Hydra isn't a person. It's what happens when one voice refuses to shut up." On the walls, a symbol had spread, an open eye inside a broken chain. No one knew who painted it first. But everyone recognized what it meant: rebellion, intelligence, and freedom born from exile. In Zurich, silence filled the war room. The operative sat alone, staring at the black screen that once displayed Ethan's digital signature. Her team had been reassigned, her authority dissolved. She had failed to contain him, and now, the system she'd served had crumbled from within. A single message remained on the screen: Phase Zero is not a threat, it's an audit. Her hands trembled. She had tracked fugitives, toppled darknets, orchestrated digital warfare. But this boy, this teen, had rewritten the mission. Not with violence, with math, with silence. And now, all she could do was watch a world she once controlled move without her. Deep in a Norwegian forest, snow blanketed a small cabin glowing faintly with firelight. Inside, Ethan sat quietly, surrounded by silence for the first time in years. No screens, no signals, just wind, wood, and thought. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was healing. On the table lay a leather-bound notebook filled with ideas, not for destruction, but for design. "What do we build next?" he whispered. Because the truth had settled in, Phase Zero didn't end the game. It just reset the board. And now, maybe for the first time, Ethan wasn't thinking about retaliation or survival. He was thinking about creation. In Brooklyn, his mother stood outside her building, handing out meals paid for by an anonymous donor. She never said his name, never confirmed the rumors. Oh, why? But when people asked, she only smiled and said, "He was always too smart for this world." Her eyes held a mixture of pride and sadness, love and loss braided tight. She had stopped waiting for a call. Instead, she looked for his work. Each financial miracle, every strange story about collapsing debt and rising hope, she collected them like postcards from her missing son. She didn't need to see him. She only needed to know he was still changing the world. A storm brewed over global markets again. Rumors swirled of a new protocol, cleaner, sharper, more philosophical. They called it Echo. No one knew who made it. But those who understood systems recognized the pattern. The code bore traces of Ethan's DNA, ethics embedded in function, fairness encrypted in logic. But this time, there was no Hydra logo, no message, just balance. As if someone had finally stopped running and started dreaming. In the Arctic silence, a small server hummed beneath the snow. A candle flickered beside it, and above it, carved into the ice, were 3 words: "Let them build." In a sleek Shanghai skyscraper, a roundtable of global tech CEOs debated the same question: can we stop Echo? The new protocol was elegant, incorruptible, and viral. It didn't just decentralize, it decentralized power itself. Legal systems scrambled to adapt. Banks hemorrhaged influence. But there was no villain to chase this time. Only a line of anonymous code with no origin point. "It's Hydra again," one whispered. "No," said another. "It's something purer." One CEO leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "If this is Reyes, he's not fighting anymore. He's replacing." That word, replacing, hung like smoke over the boardroom. Because even billionaires now felt replaceable. In a small rural town in Brazil, a girl bought medicine for her brother using Echo credits. No bank. No paperwork. Just trust encoded in transaction. She didn't know Ethan Reyes. She didn't care who he was. But she understood one thing. The system had changed. Villages were voting with digital wallets. Students were publishing research anonymously. No more gatekeepers. No more permission. The revolution wasn't loud. It was precise. Silent. Viral. In every corner of the world, people were quietly waking up to a strange new feeling. Ownership. Not of things but of possibility. And in that possibility was Ethan's ghost. On a rooftop in Nairobi, a teenage coder stared at a glowing terminal. She had reverse-engineered part of Echo, then layered her own logic into it. Her goal wasn't to control, it was to contribute. If someone like him did this, she thought, then maybe I can too. And that was the danger, the brilliance. Echo didn't ask for loyalty. It simply enabled agency. People weren't joining a movement. They were becoming one. Ethan's influence was no longer traceable. It was atmospheric. Invisible. But undeniable. What began as a teenage rebellion had evolved into an open invitation. And the world was RSVPing. Somewhere in Iceland, beneath volcanic stone and frost, a server pulsed quietly, unmanned, off-grid, unreachable. It housed the last trace of Ethan's direct code. But even that no longer mattered. What mattered was the chain reaction. The whispered stories. The girl in Brazil. The coder in Nairobi. The mother in Brooklyn. Echo was no longer about Ethan. It was about everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong, didn't matter, didn't have a say. He had lit the fuse. The world carried the flame. And as the northern lights shimmered above the icy landscape, the server blinked once more, and then went still. Years later, in a university lecture hall in Berlin, a professor closed his laptop and looked at the students. The Reyes event, he said, wasn't just about crypto, it was about belief. A girl in the front row asked, "What happened to him?" The professor paused, smiled faintly. "No one knows, but some say he became the system itself." In the hallway outside, a poster peeled gently from the wall. It bore the Hydra symbol, faded, cracked, but never erased. The girl touched it with reverence. Not for a hacker. Not for a billionaire. But for a boy who rewrote the rules because no one else would.